Hey everybody, Edo here, and for this week's League video, I wanted to talk a little bit about being a project or product lead. This is just a set of 10 rules of thumb, concepts, things to keep in mind that I think are very useful when running a product or a project. I've ran lots of games. I've had game teams larger than 50 people. I've had game teams that were me or me and a couple other people and all that. Everything in between, beginning to end. And there are a few things over the years that I've collected that are really useful things to keep in mind when running a team. These aren't in any particular order, and most of them are about process and dealing with people and managing things. This isn't about how to make a good game per se, but boy, it's super helpful. It also isn't talking about being a good communicator, organized, all those things on time, all those things that are good for product leads as well. These are more just things that I think of when I talk to people about, sort of rules of thumb, if you will. Okay, I'm also going to try to have a decent clip because I picked 10. So first and foremost, when you're running a product, oftentimes you can feel like there's lots of things going on and people need to know what they're doing and get really anxious and concerned about development and how it's progressing. And the first thing I like to tell people is all you need to be is one day ahead of development, one day ahead of your team. That's it. I think you can have that anxiety and want to plan and have it all figured out and know the project day after day after day, but the reality is sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's dynamic things going on. Sometimes you're underwater. Sometimes there's a change. And it can create this stress and anxiety, but the reality is, as long as everyone can get to their desk or from home or wherever people are working, they can come in and work. You have that much time to figure out what you need to do. So just make sure tomorrow makes sense. If people can come, sit, work, get their work done, and go home, you have that time. So you have that time to plan your next thing. Sometimes you need to do that for day after day after day, one day hand to mouth. But once you get a rhythm, you can then take your time and to plan out further. But it's always okay to just be one day ahead, and it's really important to be comfortable that you're just one day ahead. Then work your way out. So, number 2. And this is another similar one, but a little bit different. If you know you're going in the right direction, if you know what you are doing is required and necessary, then you are absolutely doing the right thing. Right? And let me say it a little differently. Like, it's easy during a project to get concerned about how things are coming together, what needs to be done and where, when. But if you know there's a bunch of work that has to happen and people are doing that work, you're not losing time, you're not behind. If they're doing the things they need to do and they're not yet done, you have time. So both 1 and 2 are about managing that anxiety as a producer, wanting to make sure everyone is working, getting their things done at max efficiency. But if you know they are doing what they need to be doing, then you are at max efficiency, right? Trust me, if you've been in that position, it's good to know that. Here's the next one. Now I'm going to pivot a little bit. Next one is this idea of losing to logic. And I think this is really important as a product lead and a project lead is it's critical that you recognize and realize when you are wrong, and you recognize and realize when a different decision needs to be made. You need to pay attention, and when there is a sound, reasonable, and logical argument to do something different, you need to recognize it, consider it, and unless you come up with a better logical reason, stick with it. Don't get caught up in the emotional side of product development. You can sometimes. You want to be, you want to get people enthralled, excited, engaged, but you don't want to be in a position where you're pushing a team in a way that doesn't make sense or doesn't reflect the scenario. Now, the bigger the organization, the more you might be forced into that position, but if you're not forced in that position, don't do it if you can avoid it. Okay, the next one I like to call or say often, I care and I don't care. And to me, this reflects what I find as a need from a production or producer standpoint is you want people to understand that you care about them as your teammate, as individuals, that you understand what their situation is, what might be going on. You really, genuinely care about people. But you need to have that in combination with this other one that don't care, where there's a deadline, something needs to be get done. You need to override somebody's decision, and being able to both express care in what you're doing, and then sort of steadfast just the reality of the situation is really important as a product manager. And I've just found when it's knowing how to split that in your head and say, look, it's not that I don't care about this person. This is just a decision I need to make, and be able to express that to people and be able to show them. Another little side bit about this is, like, especially if you're in an office, don't just only go talk to people and see people when you need things, right? Don't only email somebody or IM somebody or call somebody on your team if it's digitally distributed when you need something. Make sure you mix in talking to them and hearing about their day. The pleasantries matter, and they help when you have to make decisions. They're worth the investment. Get to know the people you're working with. Get to communicate with them, not just in an action need basis. That's a really big deal. Next one's a big one too. Simple, a lot of engineers will hear this. Garbage in, garbage out. Now, oftentimes this is about data. If you've got bad data, bad analytics, the information you're getting from users is inaccurate or grabbed poorly, and then you come to conclusions, the conclusions are bad. But that's really true all sorts of ways. Make sure that the information you're getting, whether it's from play tests or play test is a good one, other individuals, your team, research you're doing, understand the information and whether it's accurate or not, if you're going to use information as the basis for an answer. If you have inaccurate information, you're going to have an inaccurate answer. Sure, sometimes that might not be the case, but really that, know what's going in to know what's coming out, right? Okay, again, with a clip. So this is another good one, and I've expressed this to lots of people. Almost always, less work for you means more work for somebody else. This is a really important team concept. If you're an engineer or an artist, or you've come up with a solution where you say, like a really good example would be, like, rather than, creating, from an engineering perspective, rather than setting this up in a procedural way, let's have unique art for each thing, or something like that, right? Where an engineer is creating a solution that creates more art. Or another one would be like a designer shortcutting something that results in more art for somebody else. Or even something as simple as not doing a good job describing, like a really good example is you have a list of cards that you want, characters you want to have arted, and you have their character names. Well, you could just give the artist the names and say, figure it out. But that actually means that that artist has to do more work. The work is absolute. And so if you find a shortcut, that might be great, but the reality is it probably impacts another team. So thinking about through, and as the person running the project, understanding weight distribution and work distribution between teams, especially if you're paying some people in different ways, like, makes a big difference, and is something you want to keep in mind. Another one that's really important, it's not trust, it's verification, right? If you want to, if your product is moving around, your project's going on, you verifying the work that's been done, double checking edits, if it's a video game, QAing it yourself. If somebody says, oh, it's fine, you should still, as a product lead, make sure you are very confident in it. And a lot of people react poorly to that. They're like, I looked at it, I did it, I covered it, I made the call, I told them what it was. I talked to the event coordinator. But just understanding and emphasizing that projects, this is complex project management with multiple people, means failure. There will always be cases where something gets dropped the ball, and it's not any specific person's fault. It's hard, it's complicated, and verifying things, again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's better for the project, it's better for everyone overall. So don't let people get defensive about it. It's not about trust, it's about verification. So another good one is, and this, you got to have a good balance for this, is it's not micromanagement, it's attention to detail. And if you want to have a really successful project and the one that's run really well, you need to have attention to detail. You need to make sure you dot the I's and cross the T's and all that stuff, and triple and check and make sure things are going the right way and be on top of things. That's your job. You want to have that attention to detail, and oftentimes that's seen as micromanagement, that is seen as being overbearing, helicoptering around, and it's a balance, but you need to make sure you don't give up attention to detail to try and not micromanage. At the end of the day, if you're a product lead, you're the person who's making sure that every detail is paid attention to, because everyone else is typically looking in their one zone, and you're looking across the whole thing. Developers, too, often have to have that attention to detail. Okay, that was number 7. Oh, no, that was number 8. Number 9. Okay, conflict among team. 90% of the time when there is a conflict within your team, it's because people don't have the same information, or they don't have the right prioritization or the same prioritization. Really, I have to say, teams want to be successful. People all want to make the best game possible, right? People aren't trying to sabotage things. Like they all, I mean, of course you can have some weird case, but almost always people just want to be successful. They just happen to have different information, or they happen to have different priorities. So as a product lead, what you should do when you're faced with those types of issues, get people in the room, make sure everyone has all the right information, that's also the garbage in, garbage out, and make sure they understand the priorities. And oftentimes the product lead is the person who can resolve conflict of priorities, right? So once that's done, really you'll see a lot of those issues fade away. You might have some disgruntled, you might have some under your breath, but at the same time, sometimes it's just like, this is it. Oh, okay, I get it. Bring people together, communicate, work together. Okay, last one. This is actually a saying or something. This is by Edwin Markham, and it was told to me during a very trying time I was going through while I was working at Disney, and I've had it along with me since, and I think it applies in lots of different ways, but for whatever reason, it sticks with me. So I wanted to share it. For all your days, be prepared and meet them ever alike. When you are the anvil, bear, and when you are the hammer, strike. Product development is hard. Product management is hard. There's a lot of stress and strain, and knowing and paying attention to what your role is in any given moment, and what your action is in any given moment, is critical. In the most direct way, in the meaning for this, to me, this had a lot to do with just working through and doing your best through a hard situation, and then when you're on the other side of it, or when you're in a position to change things, making change occur. But nevertheless, I think in this context and in product management, it also deals with this idea of just knowing where you're in the project and understanding the flow of development. You have to. This comes game after game after game, but having some presence and perspective there, and knowing how you should act, knowing what kind of tool you are in any given moment, and acting as that tool, acting in that moment appropriately, is critical. And the other part of it is work hard every day. Work hard when things are out of control, work hard things when they're in control, work hard things when they're good, work hard when they're bad. Just keep going and don't give up. Never give up. I think it's really important. So, those in one way or another come out of what I'm doing all the time. All the time. A little bonus one, I've said this a few times. I spend 95% of my day trying not to say what I want to say. and that one's just about, think and talk. Don't just talk, or whatever it is. So anyway, I hope those are helpful and enjoyable. Thanks.